Good morning and welcome to the 50 Acres Academy webinar. Thanks very much for joining us today. Just do let me know if you're having any problems with audio as we progress. Hopefully it'll all stay functional today, which is always in doubt. I live half an hour outside of a nation's capital, but sometimes not sure whether people or the internet providers quite realise that. But anyway, there you go. If people have got questions, they can pop them into the box, the control panel box, at any point, and we will answer them. I'll answer them as we progress. At the end of today, we will always put the recording of the webinar plus we'll send out the slides to you as well, so you'll be able to have those, and we'll be able to put the recording of the video up on our YouTube channel, 50 Acres TV, which we'll send you a link to as well. So today we're talking about campaigning using digital and mobile tools and platforms and looking at what is the latest thinking in those areas. And before we sort of get stuck into the actual, tips and tricks and tools and platforms, I think it's really instructive to look at some of the predictions and some of the observations that some of the key people in the industry, both here and internationally, are making. So we will certainly do that before we move ahead and look at really dig down into what you can do and what you need to be doing. So today we're looking at, as I said, digital and mobile tools and platforms, and there are a heck of a lot of them out there, as you probably know, and it's very confusing. Obviously, it's all about digital, online and mobile. If you're not doing it, and believe it or not, there are some people still who haven't really got with the program and are still, I suppose, thinking and putting out print documents, which is absolutely great as part of a suite of stuff. But you really do need to be embracing it, and we'll talk about how we do that. But it really will depend very much on your ability to resource, your ability to staff, fund and invest, but also your willingness really to embrace it and to know what to do really in terms of what the options are, because there are so many of them. So today we're going to look at digital and mobile campaigning trends, tools and platforms. First of all, we need to, I think, before we get started, put the new tools in the context of future predictions and look at some of the data, because I think it's by understanding the data about where some of these things are going. It's quite extraordinary where things are, how things are moving. I often have said when I've spoken to people that the first iPhone was on the market in the year that Kevin Rudd was elected to office, which for some of you might be a scary time to be thinking about in reflection, well-meaning as he might have been at the beginning. But it's not that long ago, and the extreme speed that this world has moved is quite a phenomenal. And when I spoke about this stuff a few years ago, it's not what I'm about to say today. It is moving so fast that you just can't rely on notes that you made last year. It really is an area that you've just got to keep on top of, and I'm sure many of you are, and many of you are fascinated by it. But I would certainly, if it's something that you are interested in looking at, keeping on top of, subscribing to some of the interesting blogs and platforms, such as Mashable or some of the other bigger international platforms, B&T, Umbrella, even a whole lot of them really are, giving you some really interesting stuff and applying it and showing you how people are using it. I think the other thing that we need to do is and we won't reflect on this too much, but I do think it's something that's incumbent on all of us, particularly those who are working in the not-for-profit space, to do remember that even though there are lots of new tools and extremely there's always new toys and sparkly new things that are on the market that we can work with. There are also a lot of people who don't have access to them, although there's the data indicates that with China and India coming online and access to mobile technology in some of the world's most poorest nations is growing very fast. There still are a lot of people who don't have access to these tools. And a lot of them are the people that you potentially will be working with. And so, today we're going to be focusing on digital and mobile areas, but how you bridge that divide is not a simple thing in terms of an organisation. This isn't something I'm going to answer today, but it is something I just wanted to reflect on before we started. So let's look at the facts, which I think is sort of interesting before we go much further down the line. Global smartphone market is getting saturated. Shipments of smartphones grew only 3% year on year last year, which is really interesting. Even though we're all waiting for the iPhone 8 to come out, the indications are that they're slowing somewhat. That's not to say we're not getting all sorts of other new digital pieces of equipment, but there is, I don't think it's going to ever, completely, it won't stop, it'll only increase, but it just is increasing at a slower rate. Time spent using the internet on mobile devices went up again in 2016 to 5.6 hours, up from 5.4 in 2015. Now, in some groups such as young people or Gen X or Gen Y, in some countries, I saw some information presented by PwC at the Umbrella conference a couple of weeks ago, and in some countries like Japan and some other areas, people are on young people are on the internet for 8 to 10, possibly more hours a day. Internet ad revenue is set to overtake TV advertising globally in 2017, something that advertising companies are probably freaking out about, I would think, as well as TV companies. Google and Facebook have captured 85% of the growth in internet advertising. That's where that money's going. So people aren't advertising in a huge way with online platforms. They are, but they're not it's just not being monetized at the same rate as with Google and Facebook. Media disruption continues at a torrid pace, with Netflix going from near zero to 30% of the US home entertainment market in 10 years. And there's lots of other home, individual play on demand outlets as well that you can any number of them that you can access. Really, I think, as it said at the beginning, we need to all get with the program. You've got to understand this stuff to survive. So, it's really important, I think, for all of us, wherever we are, however old, however young, whatever we're doing, if we're thinking about communicating with people, growing our business, growing our organisation, increasing donations, whatever it is we're doing, we need to be thinking about this stuff. It's really important. So the visual web continues to grow in importance and sophistication. A lot of the future of search is going to be about pictures instead of words, most definitely. Image recognition and voice activation are increasingly replacing typing, particularly on mobile. So, for those, that's partly an AI-based process. So things like Siri, if you're on Samsung Viv, there is other voice-activated things that you can do. You can, type text, put things into message apps, etc., using voice. And image recognition is something that is also very useful and being increasingly used, which is sort of interesting as well. There are 2.6 billion gamers worldwide versus 100 million in 1995. Esports is coming. It's something that I, we were presented with when the PwC did the final keynote address at Mumbrella, which was just fascinating. And there's an extraordinary growth in esports. It's just, I suppose it's something that I just haven't been aware of because I've got two children. They don't do it. They don't do esports. They do real sport. But it's just a phenomenally huge thing. And, it's if there is an angle for you to get involved with esports in some way, either as a sponsor, a partner, a charity partner, a business proposition, if you're involved with sport in some way, if you don't know about it at the moment, it's something that you need to get across because the growth is out of this world. The stats are just incredible. It's, outstrips the growth in anything else. There are whole companies, a lot of them are moving to Australia and Asia to base themselves, the US and British companies. And it's really interesting what's happening in that space. So what are the clever people predicting about the future? People like Mary Meeker, who does an annual digital internet trends report, or PwC and a bunch of other sort of nerdy people. What are they telling us about all this stuff? Because it's really fascinating. I would suggest that if some of you are interested in this stuff, the PwC Outlook report, you can see bits of it online. They have a global Outlook report and a Australian Outlook report, media Outlook report. Mary Meeker is someone who does trends reports as well, and she does them every year, and people sort of hang off her every word when she brings them out in terms of her observations, a bit like the PwC Media Outlook report each year as well. So the first thing that is really interesting to observe in the context of all of that is that digital media consumption is growing. Well, duh. Who needs to be told that? We know that. But, sorry, this stuff's just dropping in. Bear with me. Sorry, this is my AI app that's telling me to do things. I'm trying to embrace AI, everyone, but whether or not it's working, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Sorry, going back to the story. Digital media consumption is growing. Everything else is shrinking. Digital advertising will continue to skyrocket. It's pretty easily understood, that one. In terms of platforms, it's Google, Facebook, and then everything else. We know that at the moment, but who knows where that's going to go. Who knew that Google and Facebook existed just a few years ago? Traditional TV has passed its peak, but TV won't die. For the last 20 years, digital has disrupted print. We know that. I know that. My husband works for the Sydney Morning Herald. I certainly know that. For the next 20, it will disrupt TV, which is freaking them out. Old TV won't die, though, so don't worry. If you've got something on TV that you still love seeing, you should be able to see it, if not live, certainly on demand. Just look at what's happened with Radio National. Most of it now is podcasts. There's only a few live programs, and a lot of them are podcasts. Well, not podcasts, but programs that are just on repeat and available on the ABC app. TV will get nicheified, so or old media will get nicheified. And become really, I suppose, big, sophisticated platforms. They won't be the sort of behemoths that they once were a few years ago, which I think is interesting. The next big thing, this is a prediction of both PwC's report and also Mary Meeker, is social video. It's not smartwatches, it's not glasses, it's not virtual reality or any of those sorts of things necessarily. It's social video. It's about using video, and we'll go into that in more detail in a sec. So social video, well, some reasons why they will continue to fly and completely be the way that people can communicate. They're what's called a thumb stopper, not like a showstopper, but a thumb stopper. Social videos travel across platforms. They don't have to just be used in one. It's just not words that can be used on one. It's something that can be used on a multiplicity of platforms. Sound is optional. As you know now, one of the things that is absolutely commonplace is that people are, videos without sound is absolutely de rigueur and is something that you've got to be able to do. So you've got to be able to have a video that, people don't need to listen to. Otherwise, they won't necessarily be listening to it in the stream as they're watching it, which is really important. They're intimate and they're conversational. We know that. We know that they're good at, they can tell a story for us. They can be square or they can be vertical. One of the facts that I talked about a few months ago was that, overwhelmingly most people are now watching video in a vertical format because people don't, by and large, like twisting their phone around. That's interesting, and I think that still continues to be the case. They're shareable. Social videos can be evocative, entertaining, and also effective. They can change behaviour and they can compel action. We know all this, but if that's where things are heading, that's why we need to make sure that we're using it in terms of, where we're heading ourselves. So digital, where is it going? Well, it's, via consumer feedback, brands will need to become even more attuned to the needs and priorities of the consumer and increasingly shape their product offerings around the latest lifestyle trends. This current trend, with startup brands as well as data analytics, identifies AI solutions, and AI is certainly on the way up, and in a very big way. I mean, I don't know, it'd be interesting to know if any of you have tried any AI platforms in recent weeks. I've just been playing around with a couple in terms of meeting people will organise meetings for me, or apps that sort of integrate a lot of other platforms on your online presence, just to see, because one of the big takeouts of the Mumbrella conference was that AI was was quite extraordinary. Artificial intelligence, I think someone's just asked me what AI is. Sorry, AI is artificial intelligence. So they're apps that will use data to do things for you, they'll read other things that you've done, predict things, suggest things, help you do things in a way that will save you time, essentially. And all the predictions are that within a very few short years, by 2022, I think it was, we're talking 5 years away, that we're going to be utilising AI like we can't imagine today. Whether that's true, I don't know, but there was lots of AI discussions at the recent Mumbrella conference, which were really fascinating. Gen Z gravitates to instant social channels such as Snapchat, Instagram. We know that. And there will probably certainly be some other platforms we've never heard of rising to social prominence next year that embrace faster, more pictorial, spontaneous ways for Gen Z to bond. Now, we don't know what they are yet because they haven't come, but just as there was a day when there was no Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, there will be something else that comes around the corner. Someone's just asking me a question. Yes, sorry, Camilla. Yes, a lot of people do use captions. It's very, very, very widely used. They're usually shorthand, so that's not necessarily the verbatim conversation, but it's a whole big market in itself. How people are captioning video and how they're using it, the shorthand language they're using to sort of tell that story, if you like, through the video. It is quite interesting. That's a whole other world, but it's very, very big development as well. It's something that one of the another umbrella discussion completely on that topic. It was fascinating. So, some digital tips. Well, information and influencers. We've talked about influencers before a lot, and I've certainly spoken about them on this webinar series. But I think the other thing that I think we do need to bear in mind is that as we're awash with more information than has ever been available to us as humans, it is quite amazing, and I think it's probably quite instructive about what's happening to our political dialogue worldwide, and I think that's partly because of access to information. But as a consequence, consumers will be on a mission to find peer specialists with niche expertise to filter recommendations that meet their needs in a customized way. That's what I'm doing. This is what I do with the webinars that I put on. I attempt to do that for people who are interested. That's what podcasts do. It's what blogs do. It's what some radio programs do. But it's about relying on those niche broadcasters, influencers, communicators to try and curate that information for you, people that you trust, so that you don't have to go out and find it all yourself. They filter that and do some of that work for you. That will be increasingly where people are going. And if that's something that you can do or you can do better, then think about that. And if you can popularize and promote some of the work that you're doing, then I think, and you're filling a gap, then think about that. Just like platforms like The Conversation, for example, which is a niche education platform. There are many, 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 many others that have started up niche entrepreneur platforms. For example, no longer are startups and entrepreneurs having to read the Financial Review or the business pages in the Australian that don't really relate to them. There's a plethora of blogs for them now and platforms. Social influencers also will continue, I think, to diversify, specialize, and to grow really, really exponentially. These influencers, everyone's heard about the term influencers. People have heard about, how we use them. Who are they? I mean, we are all influencers essentially, but some people are more influential than others, perhaps, like celebrities or sports people or just thinkers, really, people who are respected in the community or in their own group of people in their space. That's who an influencer is. These influencers will powerfully, I think, inform and guide us in our consumer decisions. Influencers will entrench as defining voices in marketing as brands really give up advertising control and look to passionate brand advocates. We see that if you look on TV now. It's not only are brands they're not selling their product anymore straight up. No longer do you just buy a handbag because it's a handbag and it's functional. You buy a handbag because it's got a backstory, that it's ethically made, sourced leather from wherever the community it's come from. The people have been paid the correct wages. The animals have been treated the best they can, whatever that backstory might be. And perhaps it's endorsed by someone who will help tell that backstory as well. So there's complexity in the way that people are marketed to and sold, advertised to these days. It's not just a simple proposition of, here's a good handbag, go buy it, because it's got lots of pockets and will keep everything in order. It needs to have all that, but it needs to have a lot more than that these days. And so I think it's about finding people who can help you tell those sorts of backstories about what you do, whatever that is. So it's about, those influencers, are they people who've worked with you, used your service, touched, your service or your issue has touched them, your business has touched them. In some places, these people will need to be paid. In other instances, they don't need to be paid. So we've talked about influencers before a lot, but I think it is something that it is really very much where we're heading, and I think it's something that we need to think about how we can use it. Digital tips in terms of advertising. And this is really interesting. I think this is really fascinating. We're all, and I've just been involved with a large campaign which is still going on, where we've been doing all of this stuff, pop-ups, banner ads, all sorts of stuff. But certainly with the latest generation, they're falling out of favour. Now, they weren't the people that we were trying to influence, so it was probably that's probably instructive. But certainly if we're trying to talk to younger consumers, they don't necessarily want brands aggressively pushing their way into social media feeds, whether that's on Facebook through promoted pins or tweets or paid for Snapchat stories. One of the big takeouts from Umbrella was, if it looks like advertising, if it sounds like advertising, it's not necessarily going to work. Increasingly, it won't work. And so you've got to make ads appear to be organic material, which is an interesting concept. You've actually got to put quite a lot of thought into that to make it look organic. It actually needs to be sort of, casual, relaxed, looking like, it was something that someone's telling them, a story that someone's telling them. Have a look next time you're looking at Facebook or Twitter or online ads, and just see for yourself how many of them are looking like this. And I think you'll find that quite a few of them are looking very relaxed, very casual, like stories, not like an ad. So you actually have to look at it twice to think, what is this? Is this an ad or is this a story? What am I looking at here? It's about blurring that line so that people aren't sure. They're not making quick judgments. They're not thinking that they're being sold something. They're really, I suppose, being told a story rather than being sold a product or a service or an issue or whatever that was. People need to be able to come to it themselves rather than being pushed, that information being pushed down their throats. Consumers will need to, I think, also seek to learn more about new products on their own time. There'll be continued resentment over intrusive marketing, which will attempt to sort of deepen, I think, it will deepen that resentment. Consumers will walk away from social platforms and inundate them with brand marketing. So the tone and content of ads needs to be geared to the new generation or new Gen Z paradigm, which is sort of fast, smart, sassy, relevant storytelling. Have a look when you have an opportunity. Observe it and see whether or not you can pick up any of these trends when you're looking at your next social media feed and the ads that are popping up. It's really interesting. So let's move on to mobile. As mobile devices take over photography, they're replacing alarm clocks. They're providing on-the-go access to favourite social media platforms. They've transformed how consumers communicate and share. And our smartphones and tablets have become our 24/7 companions. And I often say to people, what's the first thing you pick up in the morning and what's the last thing that you touch in the evening before you go to sleep is often your phone, and we all know that. So let's have a think about some mobile tips and some observations. Apps themselves account for the vast majority of all mobile usage, with greater than 85% of all mobile usage is on apps as compared to the mobile web. So, the web is only 15% of mobile usage. It's a pretty interesting fact, I think. Despite the popularity of apps, app usage remains highly concentrated, with the top 5 apps accounting for 80% of usage time. So we're talking, the big ones, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, all those sorts of things. Sorry, someone's making a comment. I'll just respond. Flavia says, I found the issue is I'm advising baby boomers leadership groups that we must create our comms with Gen Z in mind, but the divide of their understanding is a challenge. You mean that they don't understand stuff because they're so young, Flavia? Is that what you meant? I think, perhaps. So I'll just go through this slide. Apps can be revolutionary and further invigorate app usage into the future. There's a lot of move from places like Google, where they are creating, download. You can just click on something and it just opens. You don't have to download, update, blah, blah, blah. It's a new move that Google's been trying to embrace, but obviously it's only on their phones. Brands and organisations can create also one-time single-use apps that consumers can use easily and effectively. One of the things I suppose that people are I think, reluctant to do is spend a whole lot of money on apps. So I think that the solution is, in terms of apps, making sure that the app's going to have some sort of usage broadly. It is a useful investment of your time and money, and that, if there are other options like these one-time single-use apps, for example, conferences. I mean, how many people have gone to a conference where there's been an app for the conference? Again, I mean, most conferences these days are using them. And there are other things like that for events, sports events, public events, discussion groups, all sorts of stuff. You can create apps reasonably easily yourself. And it's, obviously, the more money you invest into them, you get a better result. That's without doubt. So the other thing I think we need to think about in terms of mobile and digital, without a doubt, is video, mobile video. If there's one thing that that if I leave you with today, this is probably the overwhelming tip that I would say that you need to embrace in terms of campaigning tools, platforms, any platform, investment. Instead of just thinking about video, instead of just thinking about pictures, think also about video. I'm not saying don't use pictures, but video is absolutely imperative. Social video has more or less been overwhelmed by video, with 4 times as many consumers preferring digestible video content over text. Facebook's daily video jumped from 1 billion to 8 billion in views in the past year, in 1 year. That's amazing. It's extraordinary. With 500 million people watching videos every day, even as text posts decline. So not surprisingly, ad expenditure on mobile video is expected to grow more than 30% next year. There is still plenty of runway for future growth, and as ad spend in mobile video still significantly lags actual time spent by consumers watching videos. So there'll be a lot of innovation, pre-roll live video and video embedded directly, I think, going forward. So, however you are communicating, whether that's advertising, for your not-for-profit, advertising your fundraising strategy, advertising your products, your company, your services, however you're doing it. It's time to think about how you're going to embrace video, would be my big take-out message from today. So let's carry on the video line. My biggest tip today is investing in video, either for ads, for use on social, or your website. It's where you need to be. And, as I say here, believe me, it'll pay off. Take the leap. There's new ways of approaching the mobile ad unit. It will drive a focus on key issues such as non-intrusive mobile experiences, dynamically animated and adhesive banners. We've seen those, obviously, before when you go online, a sort of a banner or something moves around, doesn't leave you. Ad delivery that dovetails even further with the consumer's locations and activities. Geo-specific, it triggers something when you're moving around. It knows where you are. There are geolocations, specific ads that sort of will know that come up via apps that tell an app that you are in a particular location, so that there might be an ad that pops up on your screen about a particular thing that's nearby. A shop, a sale, an event, a restaurant, whatever it is. Mobile video ad spend is projected to exceed $6 billion by the end of 2017, meaning that it will be a prime moment for mobile marketing to capture its share of the resulting media allocations. So, that's where the money's going. And, if you've got a site that you can sell to people, you can sell space to people, think about it. If you're thinking about communicating to people, the cost will probably come down. As ad spend increases, costs will come down over time, as we know. So this is a good time to be thinking about getting into video for a whole host of reasons, all of which we've just discussed. So let's just move on to some broad marketing tips in terms of digital marketing and mobile. It crosses both, really. Content marketing trends see more examples of interactive marketing apps like personalized tools which recommend content. You've seen that, where that sort of pops up. You might like this if you've liked that. We've seen those sorts of things for quite a while. Improving your marketing via platforms that allow automation is really important. So we're thinking things like, utilising, it's not just as simple apps as Buffer, but apps like Buffer, and there's lots of other marketing platforms that will allow you to, like HubSpot, for example. There are lots of HubSpots on the market. You just got to find one that you might want to use. They're an investment. They can be costly. I'm not saying, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but, an investment of money nonetheless. And so depending on who you need to talk to, you need to have a think about what you need to do and have a look at these platforms and see what they might achieve for you. But nonetheless, social isn't dead. The continued growth of social media usage, is still happening. It's still evident, but the reduced popularity of some social networks in some countries, e.g., for example, Twitter and Facebook, are in decline or plateauing in many Western markets, while Snapchat, Instagram, and interestingly, Pinterest are still growing in usage, which is really quite interesting. I suppose we're not surprised about Snapchat and Instagram, but Pinterest is interesting. So the other thing I think that we also need to think about is getting our house in order. And, we're all on the internet. Everyone's got an internet presence of some description, whether that's just on Facebook, if you're a small business, through to a bigger website, with a very complicated back end. Obviously it differs depending on who you are and what you're doing. But a lot of people still don't necessarily get those fundamentals right. And I think it is time to make sure we have those fundamentals right before we go out and buy any of the other shiny stuff. Because if we don't get that stuff right, fundamentally, you've got to remember, where are you sending these people when you're interacting with them online through video or however it is you're going to be interacting. You're going to send them back to your website. And if your website's not right, then the expenditure and the time spent on those new shiny things is a waste. So let's just think about that for a second. Getting your website experience right is really important. You need to maximize your conversion rate and optimize that. So you need to understand how people are converting from your website, depending on what you're wanting them to do. Do you want them to email you an inquiry? Do you want them to click on a donation form? Do you want them to take action and sign up to a petition or send a letter to a member of parliament? Do you want them to click through and buy something? Do you want them to book a time with you? You need to see what the conversion rates are on different pages and get some advice from an SEO or your web designer. If the web designer or the people who are doing your web don't know the answers to these questions, get someone else who does, because there's plenty of people out there that know how to do this stuff and get it right. And it's really important that you really get your house in order here. In terms of using the internet, I don't need to tell you this, but the facts are quite astounding. There'll be 75 billion connected devices in 3 years' time, people. So 10 times as many devices able to talk to one another as there will be people on the planet. That means each of us have 10 things each, right? Now, I mean, I don't have 10 things, so I don't know who's got the 10 items, but, those facts are pretty phenomenal. That's, I think, from the PwC document. And the Internet of Things it's an expression that people have been talking about for a long time, but it's really something you've got to get a hold of. So, if you, how do your devices talk to each other? How do your devices talk to others in your company or your organization? How do your devices talk to people who you want to talk to? Are you able to do that? Are you able to do it offline? Is there a message service or message app like WhatsApp or something like that, or a bespoke one that you might have had designed for you? How are you communicating? How are you maximizing the options that you've got? The implications are really huge and they're far-ranging, and all this sharing of data will transform the way we live our lives, and that goes without saying. So, fundamentally here we need to get the SEO right. Mobile marketing SEO techniques will be really important this year and going forward. As a lot of you probably know, Google's recent announcements about the mobile index and AMP, we need to understand those. So again, if you're not an SEO expert, you don't know what it means, and you don't know how to write text for your website to maximize these new approaches that Google's placed upon search, then get some advice and get your website edited and revised so that you actually do get it right. So the other thing I think that's really important to understand is big data. People talk about this thing called big data. What is it? Big data, little data, what is it? A lot of people are saying it. We'll explain. Big data basically is data. It's what happens to the stuff for the people that are talking to you. How do we understand what they're doing? How do we understand what they want, where they're going, what they're ordering, why they're doing it, where they're from, what makes them tick? How can we use the information we have about them to make some decisions about how we're interacting with them? That's what big data is, really. So, it'll be really crucial for us to understand this. And for those who have experienced an increase in volume on your own website, or, real-time data and data formats in your own organisation or business, and you need to, and you want to exploit the value to increase the take-up of calls to action, donations or sales, then big data is really important to understand. And again, if this isn't something that you understand yourself or something that you can set in place, then get some advice. This can be done through personalization on websites and through email marketing, through predictive analytics. We've seen that before with Google Analytics and other analytics tools. Machine learning, which is AI really, it's artificial intelligence and big data can also be mined to identify likely conversions given different customer characteristics and behaviours, depending on what they do when they're interacting with you. The other thing is mobile fundraising. Now, for many of you, some of you are involved with not-for-profits, some of you aren't, but in terms of the not-for-profit cohort that are listening today, and there are many of you, my tip here is embrace mobile fundraising. I'm sure many of you are or have, but don't be scared to embrace the new. Giving by text, viral campaigns, or online auctions, there's so many options. Make sure that you understand it and how you can utilise it. Make it really easy to give. Smartphone or tablet users don't want to fill in long forms or give away lots of details in order to donate. Make sure your fundraising page is linked into your payment system or PayPal account so donors have as simple a journey as they possibly can. Make sure that your online site is mobile enabled. How many people have gone to a site and it just doesn't work on a mobile? It doesn't work very easily. It's important. That's really vital. People making donations on smartphones, you'll lose money if you don't do that. So just coming to an end, if anyone's got any questions, don't hesitate popping a question in the box. But what are the key takeouts from today? Well, the first thing I would say is it's all in the data. We need to understand it. We need to understand how to apply it, what it tells you, and using platforms that help you understand it and get that data, find that data, suck it up, apply it, analyze it. And again, if you don't know someone, or if you don't know how to do it, get some advice. Look at how you can embrace video in what you're doing. That's a big one, and we talked about that quite extensively. Getting on top of online and mobile marketing and using it. We've talked about a number of ways in which to do it. But also importantly, getting the internet basics right, the experience of people, the users when they reach you, making sure that that experience is the best it possibly can be. So getting the SEO right, your website, and how people interact with you online, it's all very vital. So thank you very much for coming and joining us today for this webinar. It's been lovely to speak with you all. The next webinar will be on 11 a.m. Tuesday, July the 26th on DIY PR, how you can do it yourself on a low budget. We've done this topic before, but I do want to give people some tricks and tools about how they can do some of this stuff themselves. It's not rocket science. It's really about just doing the work, making it simple. So we're going to be talking about that sort of stuff next time. So thanks so much, everyone. It was great to have you with us today, and I hope you found that interesting. It's a really interesting topic, actually, and there is so much stuff out there to be fascinated by. But when you see some of this data, it's quite amazing. It is quite amazing stuff. But we don't need to be told that. But probably it's time to have a cup of tea and absorb it all and have a great day as well. Thanks so much.